Did you know that ancient sailors believed giant squids were sea monsters called the kraken, capable of sinking ships? Or that unicorns were once thought to roam the earth as real creatures, with their horns said to have magical healing powers? Have you ever wondered where stories of mythical creatures like dragons, mermaids, or unicorns come from? It's fascinating to think about how these legends began. Many of them started as early attempts to explain the unknown, things like natural disasters, mysterious fossils, or uncharted territories. For instance, when ancient people stumbled upon huge bones buried in the ground, they didn't know about dinosaurs. So they imagined these belonging to giant creatures or monsters, giving rise to tales of giants and dragons. The Greeks and Romans, for example, found fossils of large animals and wove stories around them, trying to make sense of these colossal remains. Similarly, natural disasters like earthquakes, floods, or volcanic eruptions were terrifying and inexplicable events at the time. To make sense of them, people created stories featuring gods or monsters responsible for these occurrences. It was these myths that provided comfort and a sense of understanding in a world full of uncertainties. Take the Mesopotamian myths, for example. They featured beings like Anzu, a massive bird with the head of a lion, and Tiamat, a primordial sea goddess often depicted as a dragon. These creatures embodied the chaos and unpredictability of the natural world. Tiamat in particular was associated with the sea and chaos, representing the unknown dangers lurking beyond familiar lands. Storytelling played a huge role in passing down these myths through generations. Before writing was common, oral traditions were the primary way to share knowledge and culture. Elders would tell stories to the young, who would then pass them on to their children. This way, tales of mythical creatures became deeply embedded in cultures around the world, each adding their own twists and interpretations over time. Dragons are one of the most fascinating mythical creatures, and they're found in myths and legends all around the world. It's amazing how cultures that never interacted all came up with their own version of these incredible beasts. In Chinese culture, dragons are considered symbols of good fortune, power, and wisdom. They're not the fire-breathing monsters you might think of in Western stories. Instead, Chinese dragons are often seen as guardians of water and rain, controlling rivers and ensuring balance in nature. Did you know that in ancient China, emperors were thought to be descendants of dragons? The dragon was a royal symbol, appearing on robes, thrones, and even the architecture of palaces. People believe dragons brought luck and prosperity, and they're still celebrated today during the Chinese New Year with dragon dances and parades. Meanwhile, over in Europe, dragons were much scarier. They were often seen as villains, hoarding treasures and terrorizing villages. In stories like Beowulf, a dragon guards a treasure hoard, and the hero has to face it in a deadly battle. Another famous tale is St. George and the Dragon, where the knight saves a princess from a fire-breathing monster, symbolizing good triumphing over evil. These European dragons are often winged, massive, and terrifying, embodying chaos and destruction. They became symbols of greed and danger, warning people about the risks of venturing into the unknown. But where did the idea of dragons even come from? One theory is that ancient people found dinosaur fossils and tried to make sense of them. I mean, imagine stumbling across a massive skull with sharp teeth. You'd probably think it belonged to some kind of monster too. There's also the possibility that sightings of crocodiles or giant snakes were exaggerated over time. For example, the Nile crocodile can grow up to 20 feet long and is incredibly dangerous. It's pretty easy to see how stories about these animals could have evolved into dragon myths. Here's something real interesting though. In the 13th century, a medieval scholar named Albertus Magnus claimed to have found a dragon skeleton in Austria. He even described it in detail, fueling the belief that dragons were real creatures. And it's not just fossils or reptiles. Volcanic eruptions and other natural disasters might have inspired dragon legends. I mean, fire-breathing dragons could be a way of explaining eruptions, with smoke and fire spewing from the earth. One of the coolest things about dragons, though, is how adaptable they are in stories. In some myths, they're wise and helpful. In others, they're pure evil. For example, in Japanese culture, dragons are similar to the Chinese version, benevolent and associated with water. Meanwhile, in Viking sagas, dragons like Fafnir are greedy monsters guarding treasure, and heroes have to slay them to prove their bravery. Similarly, unicorns have also fascinated people for centuries, evolving from ancient symbols to modern pop culture icons. Their story begins with early descriptions by Greek historian Ctesias around 400 BC. He wrote about a remarkable creature in India, describing it as wild as the size of a horse, with a white body, red head, blue eyes, and a single horn on its forehead. This account likely combined features of real animals, such as the Indian rhinoceros, leading to the unicorn legend. In medieval Europe, the unicorn's image transformed significantly. It became a symbol of purity and grace, often linked to religious themes. Medieval bestiaries, a kind of animal encyclopedia with moral lessons, portrayed the unicorn as a creature that could only be tamed by a virgin maiden. This allegory was interpreted as representing the Virgin Mary and the incarceration of Christ, with the unicorn symbolizing Christ himself. Such symbolism was prevalent in art and literature, where unicorns appeared in various religious texts. An intriguing aspect of unicorn lore is its association with Scotland. In the 12th century, the unicorn was adopted as a symbol of Scottish royalty, representing strength and purity. It appeared on the royal coat of arms and can still be seen in various historical sites across Scotland today. As time progressed, the perception of unicorns shifted dramatically. In today's pop culture, unicorns are often depicted as colorful, whimsical creatures far removed from the ancient and medieval representations. They appear in toys, cartoons, and fashion, symbolizing imagination, magic, and individuality. This transformation reflects society's changing values and the enduring appeal of the unicorn as a versatile symbol. Similarly, the vast and mysterious oceans have given rise to legends of formidable sea monsters. One of the most famous sea creatures is the kraken, originating from Scandinavian folklore. Described as a colossal squid-like monster, the kraken was said to dwell off the coast of Norway and Greenland, capable of engulfing entire ships and dragging sailors to their doom. These tales likely stem from sightings of real giant squids, which can grow up to 43 feet, 13 meters in length. Imagine being an early sailor, encountering such a massive creature without any prior knowledge of its existence. It would be terrifying. Another legendary sea monster is the Leviathan, mentioned in various religious texts, including the Bible. In Jewish mythology, the Leviathan is depicted as a primordial sea serpent, representing chaos and danger lurking beneath the ocean's surface. These stories may have been inspired by real marine animals or natural sea phenomena that ancient people simply couldn't explain. Early sailors venturing into uncharted waters often encountered unfamiliar creatures like whales or witnessed mysterious sea events, fueling their imaginations and giving birth to sea monster legends. Without modern scientific understanding, a breaching whale or a giant squid could easily be interpreted as a monstrous being. It's these tales that served as cautionary stories, warning others of the perils that awaited the vast unexplored oceans. Interestingly enough, medieval maps often featured illustrations of sea monsters in unexplored areas, with inscriptions like, "Here be dragons," to denote unknown and potentially dangerous territories. These artistic additions reflected the fears and uncertainties of the time, emphasizing the dangers of venturing into the unknown. However, it's worth noting that the phrase, "Here be dragons," appears on very few historical maps. One notable example is the Hunt Lexan Globe from around 1504. Similarly, dense forests and the mysteries of the night have given rise to legends of werewolves, vampires, and other shapeshifters. Werewolf myths or lycanthropy have ancient roots, with some scholars tracing them back to Proto-Indo-European mythology. These tales often emerge as explanations for abnormal human behaviors or diseases. In medieval Europe, individuals exhibiting erratic actions or unexplained aggression were sometimes believed to be werewolves. This belief was so strong that it actually led to numerous werewolf trials, something akin to witch hunts, where accused individuals faced severe punishments. Interestingly enough, certain medical conditions, such as hypertrichosis, excessive hair growth, and rabies may have contributed to these legends, as their symptoms could be misinterpreted as signs of transformation into a wolf. Vampire legends, on the other hand, are deeply rooted in Eastern European folklore, depicting undead beings that rise from their graves and drink the blood of the living. These myths were often used to explain sudden deaths or mysterious illnesses with communities. For instance, during the 18th century, a vampire hysteria spread through Eastern Europe, leading to numerous reported cases and even public executions of suspected vampires. The fear was so pervasive that people took measures like staking bodies or placing bricks in the mouths of corpses to prevent them from rising. This period, known as the 18th century vampire controversy, highlights just how deeply such fears were embedded in society. The portrayal of vampires underwent a significant transformation with literary works. John Polidori's 1819 story, The Vampire, introduced Lord Ruthven, a charismatic and manipulative figure that shaped the modern image of the vampire. This was followed by Bram Stoker's 1897 novel Dracula, which further cemented the vampire's place in popular culture as a sophisticated yet deadly creature. These stories shifted the perception of vampires from monsters to complex characters intertwining fear with allure. The fear of the unknown, especially the night, played a crucial role in shaping these myths. Before the advent of modern science and medicine, communities sought explanations for the unexplainable through folklore. The transformation of a person into a beast or the rise of the undead served as metaphors for humanity's inner fears and the dangers lurking out in the dark. These legends also acted as societal tools, enforcing moral codes and behaviors by instilling fear of the consequences of deviating from accepted norms. In today's world, these legendary beings have found new life in books, movies, and games, captivating audiences everywhere. I mean, take the Harry Potter series for example. J.K. Rowling introduces us to a world brimming with magical creatures like hippogriffs, centaurs, and dragons, each with its own rich history and traits. These beings add depth to Harry's adventures, making the magical realm feel both enchanting and perilous. Similarly, Game of Thrones bring dragons back into the spotlight. In this series, dragons are symbols of power and destruction, deeply tied to the Targaryen family's legacy. Their presence influences the show's politics and battles, highlighting humanity's desire to control the uncontrollable. In the gaming world, Dungeons & Dragons lets players encounter a vast array of mythical creatures, from benevolent unicorns to fearsome vampires. This game encourages creativity, allowing players to craft their own stories and adventures with these legendary beings. Interestingly enough, some mythical creatures have roots in real-world discoveries. For instance, the narwhal, a whale with a long, spiral tusk, may have inspired unicorn legends. In the past, narwhal tusks were often sold as unicorn horns, believed to have magical healing abilities. It's this blend of reality and myth that shows how our ancestors tried to make sense of the natural world. These mythical creatures often represent universal themes. Dragons, for instance, can symbolize immense power and greed, as seen in European tales where knights battle hoarding dragons. On the other hand, in Chinese culture, dragons are seen as wise and benevolent, bringing prosperity and good fortune. This contrast highlights just how different societies interpret the same creature to reflect their values and fears. Unicorns, with their purity and rarity, have come to symbolize innocence and beauty. In medieval times, they were often linked to religious imagery, representing the pure and unattainable. And today, they've been reimagined in pop culture as symbols of individuality and magic, appearing in everything from children's toys to fashion trends. Mythical creatures also play a significant role in cultural traditions. In China, dragons are central to festivals like the Dragon Boat Festival, where dragon-shaped boats race to honor ancient legends. The phoenix, another revered creature, symbolizes rebirth and renewal, inspiring countless stories and artworks. But what mythical creature fascinates you the most, and why? If you enjoyed this exploration into the world of myths, then please like and subscribe to Mr. History for more intriguing insights. Until next time.